Maybe Clive has an answer. Clive, you got an answer about that?
We probably do.
By the way, welcome Clive Boustred.
It's wonderful to be on your show again, William.
You've been sitting here so patiently. Just, I want to do your thing separately, but you got a comment on the Masons.
Oh, it's intriguing. I've been subject to extraordinary abuse in this country, and we'll get onto some of that stuff. I've literally been shot at in front of my kids. In fact, the Santa Cruz sheriff shot at me from a range of 5 to 7 feet, literally tried to blow my head off in front of my children. That was 6 years ago.
By the grace of God, they missed and hit
By
the car
grace
door.
of God only am I here today. When that happens, when someone starts shooting at you and you get thrown in jail under false charges, I said I wouldn't cut my hair till I got justice, by the way.
That's why it's getting so long. You're not getting justice, Clive.
I'm not getting justice, no. But when someone does shoot at you like that, you start studying, and I've studied this intensively. We can go back to the mid-1800s, mid-1850 round there. That was when the Masons turned face. Because you remember, most of the Masons actually founded this nation. If you
George
look at
Washington
the founding
was a
fathers,
Mason.
Indeed. And they were good people.
They were good people back in
Now,
in
America
1770s.
America was part of the Reformation. There was a Renaissance. This was what America was doing. It was changing the world. And the Novus Ordo Seculum that you see on the seal, the Great Seal of America, that triangle, that pyramid, meant New Order of the Ages. Nothing to do with the New World Order, by the way. We'll get on to that. But New Order of the Ages. And this New Order of the Ages in America was that we, the people, were sovereign. No one was sovereign over us. What had happened way back in Germany was that Gutenberg invented the printing press. Then Martin Luther, for example, translated the Bible from Latin into German, and then later it was translated in English. And the regular folk could pick up the Bible and they could read it. And all of a sudden they realized that the Pope was not God. And the word of the Pope was not God. And that they had a direct path to God, not through any preacher. They didn't have to pay for forgiveness of sins. So this Renaissance, this Reformation, this whole foundation of America, which was built by Masons, incidentally, was built on this Novus Ordo Seculum, the new order of the ages, where we, the people, were sovereign, and the Pope lost power. In the mid-1500s, around 1540, this was getting such a troublesome area for the Catholic Church that they formed the Catholic Mafia, known as the Society of Jesus, or the Jesuits. Ignatius Loyola formed that. Now, if you want to get an idea about the Society of Jesus, the best thing to do is to go to the Library of Congress and read the Oath of Office for the Society of Jesus, for the Jesuits. That's stored in our Library of Congress. It was actually registered in 1913. You can go to my website, Liberty for Life. Was actually registered in 1913. You can go to my website, Liberty for Life, and you click on the religion section.
Liberty for Life. Is that F-O-R?
Either F-O-R or number 4, life.com.
Liberty for Life.
And actually, if you want to learn a little bit about where we're talking about, click on the first article, The Letter Israel Missed. And then in there, you'll see the letter about Albert Pike. And that's what brings us into America into the mid-1800s. Albert Pike, a Jesuit, became the head of the Masons. Now, Jesuits and Masons are diametrically opposed to each other. If you look at that oath of office that we have on file in the Library of Congress, it shows that they wanted to kill the Masons. One needs to ask, what was a Jesuit doing leading the Masons?
Interesting question.
Obviously, what the Jesuits' goal was to disrupt the United States of America, to destroy the Novus Ordo Seculum, to wipe out this Renaissance and this Reformation, which was embodied in the United States of America. And that Mason, Albert Pike, overtook the Masonic groups and he turned them 180 degrees. He told them that their Lord was not Jesus. He told them that their Lord was Lucifer. If you read the book Morals and Dogma, in fact, we have links and we have photographs of the book in there where Albert Pike refers to his God as Lucifer.
At Liberty for Life.
If you go to libertyforlife.com, click on the first article on the top there.
I know there's some Masons out here. In fact, I have cousins who were Masons, and I had one of them ask me to become a Mason.
Now, many of the Masons are good people. Now, the fundamental principles of Masons and how they get people to join them on the lower levels are wonderful principles. They're taking care of your fellow men and women and people in trouble. They're good principles. They're not bad. But what you'll find with many of these secret societies, and unfortunately the Masons were formed as a secret society to get away from prosecution in Europe. But what happened in this Masonic group is they have these layers. And the one layer holds above the other layer and above the other layer, and you never know what's going on above you. So you get into the position where you have put through stuff, and it's a mafia methodology. The mafia will say, go and shoot that kid, or go and molest that child. Now they've got something on that person. And that's the methodology one will see which is embedded in these secret societies. Getting back to 1850s, that's when Albert Pike took over the Masons, and he instigated as an adjuteur the so-called Civil War. He actually encouraged the taxation of the South. Now, most of you went to school here in the United States of America. You know about the Boston Tea Party. Have you ever heard of the Morrill tax?
No, I've never
Well,
heard of that.
what did they tell you the reason for the uncivil war was?
To finance both sides of the war by the bankers.
Well, that's the underlying reason, absolutely. But the Morrill tax was exactly
Julie's
that.
pretty sharp, isn't
You've
she?
been educated, probably
She
because
is.
of what you've been put through. Once you get put through something like this, you start to study what's going on. And you need to go out there and study. And William, you're doing a tremendous job of bringing these issues to light. And what happened with respect to the Morrill tax, it was a 37% tax. Now, the Boston Tea Party was a 2% tax, which went up to a 5% tax. And they revolted over that. The Morrill tax was a 37% tax. Of course the South succeeded. It was guaranteed. In the meantime, Albert Pike and his crew went and instigated it even further. They took bands of Native Americans up into the north to rape and pillage and to cause as much agitation as possible. And that war did exactly what you said. It caused a debt. If you want to study what's going on historically, study the philosopher Hegel. It's called a Hegelian dialect.
Yeah.
Conflict induces change. If we can cause a war, just like the pickpocket, run up and bump someone, during that moment of conflict, what the pickpocket does is they put their hand in your pocket and induce the change from your pocket into their pocket. And that's exactly what the bankers did. They caused that war, but Abraham Lincoln tried to dupe out of that. Incidentally, Abraham Lincoln was not honest in the least bit. You were taught that at state school. How can you not separate state and school? It's insanity. We talk about separation of church and state, which is a good idea. But for goodness sake, to let the state teach your kids? It's insanity. Pure, utter insanity. You cannot let the state pump this religion of insanity into your kids because you won't know about the Morrill tax. And that gets us back to the Masons. We'll roll on onto that. The Masons basically were infiltrated by the Jesuits in the mid-1800s, causing the uncivil war. And that banker's debt, after they shot Lincoln for printing the greenbacks, lasted 70 years, and that gets you to 1913. But the Masons are not what they were found out to be in the original founders. They're exactly the opposite. The Masonic groups we have in the United States today practice some of the most heinous acts you can find. They'll be involved in devil worship. They'll be involved in masochistic type operations. They will be involved in sodomy. They'll be involved in these horrific acts. And
George
it's the
Washington would be upset to know what has happened to the Masonic order, don't you? I think he'd be really...
He'd be looking at that and say, for goodness sake, why is there no integrity? Why is there no decency?
I think
We
he'd
know,
be
for
real
example,
upset.
Yale Bones Club, which is also associated with this. It goes back to chapter 322 in Germany.
Yeah, which
links up
spun
to
off
Hegel.
the Nazi movement. It also spun off
All these things.
all these things.
But Albert Pike's most interesting because that letter he wrote to Mazzini, the head of the who was head of the Masons in Europe and also head of the Mafia in Europe, in 1871, planned the First World War, the Second World War, and this Third World War, and this great social economic cataclysm we're in right now. That was planned then.
Did you know?